Sunday dinners at the Henderson house had become a monthly ritual of humiliation disguised as family bonding. Every third Sunday, we'd gather around Mom's mahogany dining table while she served pot roast and Dad served judgment. Tonight was no different. The usual suspects were all present. Mom fussing over everyone's plates, my brother Marcus radiating smugness in his designer suit, his wife Jennifer making passive-aggressive comments about people who waste their potential, and their twin 8-year-olds who'd been taught to see me as the cautionary tale of the family. "Pass the gravy, please," I said to Marcus, trying to keep the mood light. He slid the bowl across the table without looking at me. "Careful not to spill it on your scrubs." "Oh wait, you're not wearing scrubs anymore, are you?" Jennifer giggled. "Marcus, be nice to your sister." "Half-sister," Marcus corrected automatically. It was his favorite reminder that Dad's first marriage had produced me, while his second marriage to Mom had produced Marcus, the son who actually mattered. Dad cleared his throat from the head of the table. At 62 he still commanded attention in any room he entered. His voice carried the authority of someone who'd built a successful cardiology practice from nothing and expected everyone around him to live up to his standards. "Speaking of careers," Dad said, cutting into his pot roast with surgical precision, "Marcus, tell us about the promotion." Marcus straightened in his chair, practically glowing. "Senior Vice President of Business Development. Youngest in the company's history to reach that level." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Mom beamed. "Isn't that wonderful, Sarah?" I managed a smile. "Congratulations, Marcus. That's a big achievement." "It really is," Dad agreed, his pride evident. "Marcus understands what it takes to succeed in the real world. Focus, determination, practical thinking." The emphasis on practical thinking was aimed directly at me. It had been Dad's favorite criticism since I'd left my nursing job at his hospital 2 years ago to pursue what he called pipe dreams and wishful thinking. "Some people," Dad continued, warming to his theme, "chase fantasies instead of building stable careers. They throw away perfectly good opportunities for delusions of grandeur." Marcus leaned back in his chair, enjoying the show. "Remember when Sarah thought she was going to be a doctor? That was adorable." "I am going to be a doctor," I said quietly. The table went silent except for the sound of Jennifer's nervous giggling. Dad set down his fork and fixed me with the look that had intimidated medical students for 3 decades. "Sarah, we've discussed this. Medical school at 32? With no savings, no support system, and frankly no realistic chance of success? It's time to accept reality." "What reality is that?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "That some people are cut out for medicine and others aren't." Dad's tone was gentle, which somehow made it worse than if he'd just yelled. "There's no shame in being a nurse. It's honest work. But pretending you're going to compete with 22-year-olds who have their parents' financial support and natural advantages." "Natural advantages?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. Marcus jumped in. "Come on, Sarah. Dad's trying to help you be realistic. You've always been the dreamer in the family, but at some point you need to grow up." "I am grown up. I'm 32 years old with a nursing degree, 8 years of ICU experience, and you threw away a good position at my hospital to chase a fantasy," Dad interrupted. "Do you know how embarrassing it was when Dr. Patterson asked why my daughter had quit nursing to play student again?" The familiar shame started creeping up my throat. This was how it always went. I'd try to explain my goals, my progress, my carefully laid plans, and somehow I'd end up feeling like a naive child who didn't understand how the world worked. "I didn't quit to play student," I said. "I'm in my final year of medical school. I've completed my rotations, passed my boards, and—" "Medical school," Marcus snorted. "What medical school? You're taking online classes from some Caribbean diploma mill." "That's not children," Mom intervened, though her tone suggested I was the one causing problems. "Let's not argue during family dinner." Dad nodded approvingly. "Your mother's right. But Sarah, this conversation is long overdue. I've been patient, I've been supportive, but watching you waste your 30s on impossible dreams is painful for all of us. Especially when you could have stayed at the hospital," Jennifer added helpfully. "Such good benefits in nursing." I felt the walls closing in. This was the Henderson family dynamic in perfect display. Marcus succeeding at everything while I stumbled through life making poor choices and embarrassing everyone with my unrealistic ambitions. "Maybe," Dad said, his voice taking on the tone he used when delivering difficult diagnoses. It's time to admit that medicine isn't your calling. Some people are meant to support doctors, not be doctors. There's honor in knowing your place. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom busied herself with clearing plates. Marcus checked his phone. Jennifer whispered something to one of the twins about Aunt Sarah's feelings. The family failure, Dad announced, looking around the table to make sure everyone was paying attention. That's what we're dealing with here. 32 years old, no stable career, no savings, no realistic prospects. Just endless excuses and blame. Marcus couldn't contain his satisfaction. His smirk spread across his face like he'd just won the lottery. That's when the doorbell rang. I'll get it, I said, grateful for any excuse to leave the table. The FedEx driver was holding a thick envelope with the seal of the American Board of Internal Medicine. My heart nearly stopped. Dr. Sarah Henderson? He asked, checking his tablet. That's me. He handed me the envelope and waited while I signed for it. My hands were shaking as I closed the door. I knew what was in the envelope. I'd been waiting for it for 3 months. But seeing it in my hands with my family's voices still echoing from the dining room felt surreal. I walked back to the table in a daze. What was that about? Mom asked. I looked down at the unopened envelope, then up at my family's expectant faces. Dad was already frowning, probably assuming it was more bad news about my fantasy career. My medical board certification, I said simply. The table went completely quiet. You're what? Dad's voice was barely a whisper. I tore open the envelope with hands that were no longer shaking. The letter was formal, official, and absolutely real. Congratulations, Dr. Henderson, I read aloud. The American Board of Internal Medicine is pleased to inform you that you have successfully completed all requirements for board certification in internal medicine. Dad's fork clattered to the floor. You're board certified? Mom asked, her voice cracking. As of last week. I kept reading. It also says here that I've been selected for the chief residency at Metropolitan General Hospital, effective July 1st. Marcus had gone completely pale. Chief residency? The letters from Dr. Williams, I continued, still reading. He's the department head at Metro General. He says, and I quote, your performance during your internal medicine residency has been exemplary. Your research on cardiac intervention protocols has impressed not only our staff but colleagues nationwide. We believe you represent the future of internal medicine. The silence was so complete I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. There's more, I said, unable to keep the smile out of my voice now. I've also been offered a position as attending physician in the cardiac unit at Metro General, pending completion of my cardiology fellowship. Dad finally found his voice. Cardiology fellowship? Johns Hopkins. Full fellowship with a research stipend. I folded the letter carefully. I start in September. Jennifer was staring at me like I'd just announced I was moving to Mars. But you're a nurse. I was a nurse. Now I'm Dr. Henderson, board-certified internist, soon-to-be cardiologist, and as of next month, department head of the cardiac ICU at Metro General. Marcus finally managed to speak. Department head? I pulled out my phone and showed them the email I'd received that morning. Dr. Williams offered me the position yesterday. Youngest department head in the hospital's history. Dad was still staring at the letter in my hands. How is this possible? Medical school, I said simply. The same medical school I've been attending for the past 4 years while you all assumed I was wasting my time. Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, actually. Not exactly a Caribbean diploma mill. Johns Hopkins. Mom whispered. Full scholarship, based on my nursing experience and MCT scores. Graduated summa cum laude last month. I looked around the table. Did you really think I'd been lying about medical school for 4 years? The question hung in the air like smoke. But you never said. Dad started. I tried to tell you. Every time I came to dinner, every time we talked on the phone, every time you asked about my situation. But you'd already decided I was the family failure, so you stopped listening. Marcus cleared his throat. You said you were taking classes. I said I was in medical school. You chose to interpret that as taking classes or playing student, or whatever made it easier to dismiss. Dad was holding his head in his hands. I don't understand. Why didn't you make us understand? Because you didn't want to understand, I said gently. You wanted me to be the cautionary tale. The daughter who couldn't live up to the family standards. It was easier than admitting you might have been wrong. Mom started crying then. Not dramatic sobs, just quiet tears rolling down her cheeks. I'm so sorry, she whispered. We're so sorry. I looked around the table at my family, really looked at them. Dad, the successful cardiologist who had somehow missed his own daughter becoming a cardiologist. Marcus, the golden child whose business promotion suddenly seemed less impressive next to a medical degree and department head position. Jennifer, who was frantically Googling Johns Hopkins on her phone. The twins, who were too young to understand but old enough to sense that something fundamental had shifted. I need to ask you something, I said to Dad. When Dr. Patterson asked why I left nursing, what did you tell him? Dad winced. I said you were going through a phase. That you'd be back when you came to your senses. Well, you can tell him the truth now. I left nursing because I was accepted to medical school. And in 6 months, when I complete my fellowship, I'll be Dr. Sarah Henderson, cardiac specialist, returning to healthcare not as a nurse, but as his colleague. The weight of that statement settled over the table like a blanket. Dr. Henderson, Marcus said slowly, like he was testing how the words sounded. That's right. Dad finally looked up at me. I've been an idiot. You've been human, I corrected. But yes, you've also been an idiot. Can you forgive us? Mom asked. I thought about that question. Could I forgive 4 years of dismissal, doubt, and outright mockery? Could I forgive being called a failure while I was actually succeeding beyond any of their expectations? I can forgive you, I said finally. But I need you to understand something. I didn't become a doctor to prove you wrong. I became a doctor because it's what I was meant to do. With or without your support, with or without your belief, with or without your approval. Dad nodded slowly. I understand. Do you? Because for the past 4 years I've been sending out Christmas cards signed, Sarah Henderson, Maryland, and you've all been too busy assuming I was delusional to notice the MD part. Marcus winced. We thought it was aspirational. It was accurate. I stood up from the table, still holding my board certification letter. Where are you going? Mom asked, panic in her voice. Home. I have surgery in the morning. I'm assisting Dr. Williams on a triple bypass. And then I have a department meeting to attend as the new cardiac ICU head. I paused at the dining room doorway and turned back to my family. For what it's worth, I never wanted to be the family failure. I just wanted to be myself. It took me a while to realize those didn't have to be the same thing. Dad stood up. Sarah, wait. I stopped. I'm proud of you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I should have said that years ago, but I'm saying it now. I'm proud of my daughter, the doctor. For the first time in years, those words meant something. Thank you, I said. That means more than you know. I drove home that night thinking about transformation. Not just my own transformation from nurse to doctor, from family disappointment to success story, but my family's transformation from dismissive to stunned to hopefully genuinely supportive. The next morning, I walked into Metropolitan General Hospital wearing my white coat with Dr. Sarah Henderson, internal medicine, embroidered on the pocket. The same hospital where I'd worked as a nurse for 8 years, where everyone knew me as the quiet, competent ICU nurse who always stayed late and never complained. Now I was walking the same halls as Dr. Henderson, department head, cardiac specialist, Johns Hopkins graduate. Dr. Williams met me at the elevator. Ready for your first day as department head, Dr. Henderson? Ready, Dr. Williams. Excellent. The cardiac team is eager to meet their new leader. Word has already spread about your research and your fellowship acceptance. Quite impressive. As we walked toward the cardiac unit, I passed the ICU where I'd spent 8 years as a nurse. Several of my former colleagues waved and called out congratulations. They'd known all along what I was working toward. They'd covered my shifts when I had exams, celebrated my acceptance to medical school, and supported me through every step of the journey. It was funny how the people who worked with me every day had believed in my potential, while my own family had seen only failure and delusion. But that was changing now. That evening, I got a text from Dad. Told Dr. Patterson about your new position. He's impressed and wants to discuss a collaboration between our departments. Dinner Sunday to celebrate. I smiled and typed back, Sunday works. But I might be late. I have surgery scheduled for 2 p.m. His response came immediately, "Of course you do. We'll wait for Dr. Henderson." For the first time in years that felt exactly right.